This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 29th show. I provide you the news on everything regarding your money, fresh information on the market trends and conditions in our local economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. To talk to any of the guests that I have in studio, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Vincent Humphrey with Humphrey Associates. Vincent, excited to have you back in studio again. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
And a little background about Vincent. Vincent Humphrey is an attorney at Humphrey Associates PLLC, which focuses on family law, real estate, and civil litigation. His passion is in bringing justice and clarity for the everyday working man and woman. Vincent was just awarded Outstanding Young Lawyer of the Year by Washington State Bar Association for 2015. Congratulations, by the way. That is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And congratulations really in order when you hear this. He's the only one out of 8,000 possible attorneys to gain this honor. And so that's why you're sitting here in studio, Vincent. I'm just saying.
It is truly my honor to be here again. I'm excited.
Now, Vincent also holds a Juris Doctorate degree from University of Idaho College of Law and Bachelor's Science and Political Science for University of Washington. He has over 15 years of mediation and negotiation training, which he has gained through intensive classes on the job situations. Vincent has advised companies and overseen transactions over $100 million. Furthermore, his skill and set all allow him to counsel many companies ranging from tech companies to law firms. Now, I want to say I'm excited about the topic, but you know, sometimes when I bring you in studio, Vincent, the topic isn't always exciting, but it's information that we have to know. And I hope that none of my listeners are going through divorce. But if you are, that's really what the show is about. It's bringing in important information that we need to know in regards to everything when it has to do with our money. And fortunately for you, you get to help people through this process. Unfortunate for listeners if they're going through this, but having the right advice and knowing what to do is going to make it a lot easier process for you. Wouldn't you agree, Vincent?
I would agree, and we'll just say that this might be for a friend, right? Maybe not one of the listeners. Maybe it's for a friend or somebody you know.
I really like that. So be a great friend and share this information if you have anybody that you know going through a possible divorce. Great way to spin that, Vincent. So how is it that you decide on who gets the house during a divorce?
That's a great question. And, you know, I guess my legal disclaimer is I'm going to be talking about all sorts of things, but obviously you want to talk to a trusted advisor, i.e. an attorney or somebody that you can go into more in depth. But to tackle that question, there are so many factors. So it's not an easy answer, but what many people are aware of is that, yes, Washington State is community property. And so that's kind of no knowledge that it's 50-50. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the topic of who gets the house has a lot of variables. For instance, some of the big considerations that I'm seeing that the courts are looking at is maintaining the status quo. So just because you might be paying the mortgage, you still might be in the divorce proceeding. You might have to exit that house due to kind of all of the other factors that are going on. The court wants to maintain the status quo and doesn't want either party out in the cold, whereas that might be what you were looking for. The court is just not going to take that position. So the status quo, what's in the best interest of the children, and also the financial capacity of both parties. If one side earns more and makes the money and the other takes care of the house, well, you know, that might be your status quo. And
makes sense.
Again, that thought, whereas you might be upset, the court's just not going to have somebody out on the street.
Yeah. And it makes sense. So what about the evaluation or the value of the property? How is that determined, Vincent?
also another great question, because the courts, a lot of times people think that maybe the attorney knows, or the judicial officer, they know how much this house is worth. Or maybe if I pull it up on my phone or Google search or Zillow, which I see a ton of, where people have gone in with either nothing and said, you know, Your Honor, or to the attorney, I think the house is worth X. And then the other side says, well, I think that house is worth 5X.
Yes.
And then you're saying, well, what is it? Is it X? Is it 5X? I recently had a situation where I saw somebody and both sides didn't tell the court either way what the house was worth. They just said X. So another side said 5X, and the court said, I don't know. We just shoot to the middle, which was really unfortunate.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do you do to avoid that?
What you can do to avoid that is obviously have good representation. Also, there are appraisers. There are great real estate teams that I know of. For instance, there's a James Real Estate Group that I've worked with that actually take into consideration the community property. So what have you gained together? But also that separate money. So maybe you had an inheritance and you added a new granite countertop or the floorboards. I know later on in the show we're going to be hearing about staging.
Yes.
So maybe there's certain furniture or pieces that were bought with whole separate money. That all affects value.
Wow.
As Lloyd was saying earlier, with as you're making improvements, well, what money went into that improvement? If it was from a will or a certain inheritance, that's actually categorized different. So all that being said, you need somebody that understands all of those variables, because a lot of times the quick answer is, well, just get it appraised, or just go to a real estate broker. They'll know, but most don't, which is where this matters, because we're talking about potentially tens of thousands of dollars just left on the table because you didn't take the time.
So like the real estate property, location. In this situation, documentation.
Yeah, that too.
So make sure that you have everything lined up and prepared. Now, we're just as Lloyd mentioned, because we are seeing our property values come back, which is really awesome. But there still are people out there that might be upside down. What they owe on the property is more than what the value is. What happens there?
Yeah, and there's a couple of things from a legal standpoint. You know, some people say, well, I want the house, and this might be a situation where, no, you get to have the house.
I don't want this house.
At all.
I told you we shouldn't have taken out that second mortgage.
And you know, with here, there's some other considerations you can think of. You know, some of those buzzwords: deed in lieu, a short sale, rent it possibly, maybe hold it. Maybe right now is not the right time to go through the divorce.
Yes.
Maybe.
And the rent is a really good idea, because rents are going up so quickly, and finding out, you know, that might take care of that mortgage payment.
Absolutely. Or figuring out, well, maybe we can go through the divorce proceedings and figure out the asset side in a different form. Let's get divorced from each other. Let's get out of this. But as it relates to the house, let's either take time on that, or let's figure this out later. So really segmenting those issues. And so I would say, again, that a good attorney is looking at, what are your needs? Is it really that it's this person, or the situation has since changed, and maybe it's not the asset? But if it is the asset, looking at, well, what are the tax ramifications? A lot of times, you know, going through a divorce, there's a ton on your mind, and you're thinking, okay, maybe I just need out. But down the road, the tax implications, those come up. And so being able to kind of have a roadmap all the way through the process to see, how is this going to affect me afterwards? Because again, the courts, unless you let them know, they're not going to do that homework for you.
Exactly. And so what about the typical timeline for divorce, when somebody picks up the phone and connects with you and hires you for their counsel until the divorce is actually completed? What does that time frame usually look like? I know it can be all over the board, right?
Right. You know, the standard answer is the quickest you can do it is 90 days. 90 days, you know, and that's kind of a known thing that, all right, well, the quickest I can get in and out is 90 days. And so from the time you file, the court has this kind of cooling off period.
Make sure that you really want to go through
absolutely,
with it.
Absolutely.
Because there are times, I have to say, in 20 years of marriage that, you know, sometimes it's like, you know what, he's not being very nice today. Okay, next day I'm over it. It's all good.
Well, congratulations on 20 years.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry, but Barb, my mother-in-law, which I love, she listens to the show every weekend.
Got it. Well, hey there, Barb. Glad that we're in 20 years.
Yes.
And so, you know, again, 90 days being, you know, the quickest, but, you know, in my experience, what I'm seeing is people will dig their heels in for either the children or the house.
Yes.
Some sort of asset or the children. Absent those, a lot of times, we can figure it out. But when you start bringing in assets or retirement accounts or accounts overseas that you may or may not have heard about, it changes it up a little bit. So I would say that, again, there's all sorts of things that can happen, from temporary orders to maintenance / alimony that comes up.
Yeah.
All of these things kind of push that timeline out. So it kind of comes down to the complexity. Do you guys own a business together? Right.
Yes.
So all of those start to add those layers. And depending on how much thought that you've put into going into this, it informs the timeline. And sometimes you're just mad. Let's just call it what it is. You're just mad.
Yep.
And you say, I don't care how long it takes. I'm getting back at him or her, and I want them to feel it.
Yeah.
That obviously kind of drags the process out a little bit.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure that you definitely, your counsel can help smooth it through that process. I know as an attorney, sometimes there's some counseling that's in there to help through the process and really make it best for everybody to get this decided on and resolved. Now, what about the property? When can it be sold, Vincent?
Absolutely. The property itself, if the parties agree, if both sides say, you know what, we want to sell this, if you agree, that process is streamlined. You can go into a court, it's called ex parte, which is just a fancy word to say you can go in and immediately see a judge. And if you guys both agree, you can say, hey, here's what we want to have happen with the property, and we want to move forward. So this is great, depending on how the situation is. But if both sides say, you know what, we both want out of this ASAP, or maybe there's a lot of equity, as Lloyd was saying earlier, those values are going up. And maybe the kids are out of the house now, and that's what you're looking to do. Maybe a relocation from one side. So if you guys both agree, you can get in and move that along. And so that's on one side. On the other side, if sides don't agree, I would say that's a good time to talk to your attorney, because then that comes into strategy. Is it really worth it? Do you want it? So
yeah. And then what about a temporary?
Temporary. If in the meantime, again, working with a good attorney or a broker, there is ways to gain access to the house. Maybe one side is going to have to move out. There's been situations where one spouse lives upstairs, the other lives downstairs, and you guys are kind of...
Not the War of the Roses.
Right, just trying to ride this thing out. So there are things you can do. I wish I had more time because I could go into more detail, but time doesn't allow. But again, there are things temporarily to get you through that situation. And
the biggest advice that I can give you is listening as a listener today is really in any arena when you need some assistance, which everything regarding money, you need to get expert advice before you make any decisions. Pick up the phone. What's the best way to reach you, Vincent, by phone
absolutely.
Or by web?
You can email us. Our email address is info@HALegalTeam, all one word, HALegalTeam.com, info@. And our office number is 206-946-8580.
Perfect. So definitely give Vincent a call. And just as our wrap up here for my last 60 seconds with you, what do you want to leave the listeners with?
I would say that if anything, get advice. Get good advice. I have seen so many people come to me after trying and not getting the results they wanted, or not understanding that they left literally thousands of dollars on the table. And all it would have taken was a phone call or just to sit down to figure out what's going on. Seek advice.
Thank you so much. And if you didn't get Vincent information, you definitely have the show information. Call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, it's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. I will directly connect you with Vincent and their company. And on the website, you can get to any of our guests. All their contact information is there. So, Vincent, thank you so much for coming into studio. It's a pleasure to have you here. And thank you for all that you're doing in the legal arena, where people need some advice and some really good help.
Tina, all I can say is thank you again for being here. For those of you that are listening, she's looking gorgeous. She's got a great smile on. Had a wonderful time. Thank you again.
Thank you, of course. Coming up next in the Money Hour, why staging your home is so important before you put it on the market. Do you want to get top dollar, or do you just want to sell the house? Tori Toth with Tori Toth International coming up next right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.